So let's get into our first NFL headline, and we're going to start with President Trump responding to the NFL's new national anthem rule. He said, quote, "The NFL is doing the right thing," and specifically the owners did the right thing. He also mentioned in his announcement, that players who don't stand, quote, "maybe shouldn't be in the country." So an interesting quote there from President Trump. We've heard him say similar things like this in the past. Is obviously also coming off the report that we had breaking on NFL Daily on Wednesday that the owners are, quote, "effing terrified of President Trump," which, mind you, they should be terrified of him. I understand that, whether you agree with Donald Trump or not when it comes to this certain stuff, you should be terrified of him if you're a sports league. Any sports league should fear the president and his opinions on this. Obviously, he has a massive fan base. A lot of the quote-unquote flyover states that Donald Trump won are obviously some of the bigger NFL kind of fan bases. But if you're an NFL franchise and you're specifically an NFL owner, the last thing that you want is the president of the United States calling you out on Twitter, calling you out on a speech for having an opinion that you just don't agree on it with. Now, if you're an NFL player and you're coming out and having a differing opinion with the president, it's a little bit different because you're a player and you're more of an employee. But for an NFL owner, there's only 32 of you, probably one of the richest people in the world. It is a very bad look to have such a public disagreement with the president of the United States. Obviously, also the power that he has over news cycles. Not a ton of power over NFL ratings. I need to point this out, that NFL ratings were actually up last year, and most of their primetime games dominated the most viewed shows of 2018. But still, I'd be afraid of Donald Trump if I was an NFL owner, so I can understand why they try to push this through. But I want to know from you guys, what are your thoughts on the new national anthem policy? For me, I think the policy, it makes sense coming from the NFL and what they have to worry about. From a player's perspective, one of the stupidest decisions you could possibly make to not go to the players' union to see what they think about this first. That was a terrible look on the NFL. Just chalk up another huge mistake that Roger Goodell and the NFL have made over the past couple of years. But for the most part, I find that we're going to have a much more interesting year in terms of what we're going to do with the anthem policy this year. I think it's going to do a lot of things overall for the NFL. I don't think it's going to improve or decrease ratings, but the players are going to respond to this in some sort of, I don't want to say an outburst, but they're going to react to this, whether it's all of them staying in the locker rooms or maybe they do something on the field that's a little bit more outlandish than just kneeling. I think something is going to happen this year with the players that is really going to put this anthem policy back into the spotlight. It's going to be one of the top topics all year. I thought we had moved on from this, but the NFL just won't let it die. And speaking of not letting it die, Steve Kerr responded before the game last night saying, quote, "It's typical of the NFL." He also said it's idiotic. Now, Steve Kerr has been very outspoken on numerous political issues. He said that the NFL is playing to their fan base, which, look, I've agreed with Steve Kerr on topics in the past. I think that him being so outspoken on those political issues, like I said, it's good for the NBA. This is the head coach of the #1 team in basketball. You want him saying this kinds of stuff, especially with, the NBA having such an urban-based fan base. But I think his comments in the past, and especially stuff like this, have been, I almost want to say, viciously divisive. But that's been the political nature of 2018 in general. I think that Steve Kerr, with the stuff that he said in past, he's obviously tried to emulate Greg Popovich with a lot of the stuff he said. So whether or not, obviously, Steve Kerr has an impact on the situation in general remains to be seen. But I just find that a lot of the stuff that we have Steve Kerr saying about the NFL over the past years, it just hasn't helped things. If anything, I think it's made stuff worse. It's made stuff more complicated, and it's divided a lot of the fan bases of someone who's an NBA fan and an NFL fan like I am. I find it difficult to find whose side do I go with, because I love Steve Kerr. He's a very intelligent guy and constantly has a lot of great points on stuff, but I also think that him saying that the NFL is playing to their fan base, well, I mean, of course they are. They have to. If the majority of their fan base doesn't like what the players are doing, then obviously the NFL needs to respond to the need to do something about it. So I don't think criticizing them for playing to their fan base is the right way to go. I think criticizing them for the physical rule is the problem here, but I think Steve Kerr's message, like it usually does, is getting a little bit mixed up in hyperbole rather than legitimate facts. And that's just something I think we've seen when we've had NBA people comment on stuff going on with the NFL. But I will say this, and this is something that came out yesterday, and this will bring us to our next headline. I don't know how the NFL continues to mess up so many pivotal parts of huge rule changes, and we got another big report yesterday that the NFL did not hold a vote for the new national anthem policy. Apparently the league owners, quote unquote, polled owners, but they didn't hold an official tally, and then we had Roger Goodell saying that the vote was unanimous. So they didn't hold a vote, but it was unanimous. I mean, did they have the owners fill out a survey monkey or something? Like, how do you get that it was a unanimous vote if you didn't actually hold a vote and then also let this get public? Now, I will say this, obviously, to support that there are two sides of this story. Ian Rappaport says that there was an official vote held. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Ian Rappaport works for the NFL. Ian Rappaport is an employee of the NFL Network. So they are going to use him as a mouthpiece to deliver whatever information they want to put out there. So the real report that came out from Seth Wickersham yesterday is that they did not hold an official vote, which again, very, very atypical for a major resolution. That is not what we have seen from sports leagues in the past. This seems like something that you need to have all the owners sit down and decide, not just send out a memo and say, hey, what do you guys think of this? We want to find out, haha, casual. It's going to kind of decide a lot of the headlines for the NFL season, but, you know, a casual little tally. I just don't understand how the NFL, not even with just something like this, consecutively over the past 5 to 10 years has just messed up every single possible big decision that you could, between Deflategate and Ezekiel Elliott, and now the stuff with the anthem and everything going on with domestic violence and opioids, with marijuana. Like, every single time they have an opportunity to push the league forward and really try to do some legitimate reform that would help the league with their players and their future, concussions especially, they just don't. They do the complete opposite thing of what they would need to do in order to make the situation better. It's frustrating as an NFL fan. I think they're losing fans by consistently messing things up like this. And it goes back to my original point. They have the opportunity here to do the right thing. Maybe the right thing isn't saying, oh, if you kneel, you're going to get fined. I think a good idea is that if you don't want to stand up for the anthem, you stay in the locker room. But the wrong way is to punish players for expressing their First Amendment rights. Now, obviously, these players are private employees, and the NFL is their employer, and they can fire them if they deem their actions to be negative towards the league. But finding a player for enacting their First Amendment rights is going to be very shaky, and it's going to raise a lot of question marks as to what the NFL values in terms of its overall policies. But again, they didn't vote for this. Rappaport says they do. Take it either way you want. But again, Ian Rappaport is always going to side with the NFL. They sign his paycheck. Let's get to our next headline here. Apparently, the NFL sought the public opinion on Kaepernick. They commissioned an official poll back in 2017. The goal was to see if people thought that Colin Kaepernick should have been signed. We don't know if that data was sent to other NFL teams, but we know that Roger Goodell and other high-ranking officials with the NFL do have it. But this isn't very surprising to me. I don't think people need to freak out about this. Leagues do this all the time behind closed doors. They will constantly find polls, do kind of a little bit of public testing to see how new rule changes would work, or to just get the public opinion on certain things. I know the NBA has done this in the past with certain political issues. I'm sure the NFL has done this in the past as well to kind of gauge where they are in the court of public opinion. This is also how teams find out what fan bases want. You'll see this a lot, that they'll poll season ticket holders to kind of see what they want the direction of the team. Now, this isn't always stuff that has to do with political issues. Sometimes it may just be, you know, do you want us to decrease hot dog prices by $3 next year? But this is obviously a little bit more serious of a poll. Again, we do not have what that data ended up showing, but we do know that the NFL has seen it and probably interpreted some sort of rule change off of this. I still think that they did a secret poll with their fan base about the anthem stuff. and then made the rule based off of it. But again, that's conjecture. I do not have an official report behind that. But let me know in the comments section if you think a team should sign Colin Kaepernick. I don't know, honestly, anymore, because at this point we're so far removed from him actually being a legitimate football player. I think he should still get signed just to get a chance in camp, but I think the argument was last year, oh, Colin Kaepernick deserves a chance to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think that opportunity is gone. I just don't think you can legitimately give him a chance at a starting quarterback job. Also because most teams in the NFL right now have a legitimate idea of who they want to be their starter, or have a couple different options like the Jets or even the Broncos having a little bit of a quarterback battle. But I think a team should, but the farther and farther we get from Colin Kaepernick having been on an NFL field, the farther and farther we get from him actually having a chance of being signed. All right, let's get to our next headline here. We'll update you on what's going on with Reuben Foster quickly. Obviously, on Wednesday, he was found not guilty of domestic violence after the victim openly lied under oath during the trial, constantly claiming that Reuben Foster hit her multiple times, which was just a flat-out lie, which I can't believe, A, was even possibly defended or not figured out beforehand. B, the DA that was covering the case still claims that Reuben Foster did this by saying that we can't believe anything the victim said because she's such a big liar, which apparently, according to the DA of the county, means that Reuben Foster is still guilty. Just ridiculous. And again, this is my issue with a lot of stuff that's been going on with the domestic violence stuff. Obviously, domestic violence is not good. It is something that you want to weed out of the NFL as quickly as you possibly can. But one thing that I've had a big issue with, doesn't matter if the report is true or not. You instantly lose the court of public opinion as soon as one of these reports come out, whether it's true or false. Not a lot of people keep up with the outcomes of these trials. Usually they see the headline, Reuben Foster accused of domestic violence. As soon as they see that headline, they instantly assume that he's guilty, want him suspended, or want him out of the NFL. I would love to know the amount of people who saw the initial headline that Reuben Foster was accused that actually know what happened in the case and how badly the victim lied. I would love to see a poll on that. I think that would be a little bit more of an interesting poll than seeing if fans think that Colin Kaepernick should be signed. But that's just me. I've been also annoyed that on Twitter, the reaction to the victim lying straight up in court was not anything near what the reaction was to when Reuben Foster was initially accused. Now, I understand that Reuben Foster is a famous NFL player. He's a big-time name, and this woman, I'm not saying she's a complete nobody, but she's obviously not an NFL player, and nobody really knows her name. But it constantly proves my point that innocent until proven guilty, at least when it comes to athletes, is dead and has been dead for a very long time now, almost a half decade. So we got to get back to a point where these guys are not instantly assumed guilty before there's an actual trial. Because as we've seen here, lying does happen. Some people do legitimately want to ruin these guys' lives. So please, wait until the full story comes out and don't just assume that everyone is guilty. Once a guy is found guilty, boom, go ahead, rip them to pieces. But please, be patient and be responsible with these news reports. Not everything that you see on the internet is true. All right, let's get to our next headline. Rob Gronkowski and the New England Patriots are indeed nearing an extension. According to Jeff Howe of The Athletic Boston, it is quote-unquote likely that Rob Gronkowski will play in 2018 under new terms. He is currently set to make up to $9 million in 2018. He made over $10.2 million last season, which was #1 money for tight ends in the NFL. If you watch me on the Patriots Report, I've been saying this all offseason. People thought that the retirement was because maybe, he got injured or him and Bill Belichick weren't getting along. No, this entire thing has been about money. Since the beginning, Gronk has always wanted an extension. Just like LeBron James, he has constantly wanted to be paid as the #1 player at his position. As of right now, with the contract he currently stands to make, he would be the #2 paid tight end in football. He doesn't like that. His agent doesn't like that. And they've decided that until Gronkowski gets an extension, he's not going to show up to OTAs. This has been about money the entire time. And I think that the Patriots have known this. They've been working towards an extension. Everything that we've heard is that the Patriots are okay kind of doing what they did last year, where they turned a lot of money that he wasn't initially going to have and made it incentive-based. I mean, he made almost $3.5 million this year by making first-team All-Pro for the NFL at the tight end position. So expect something very similar this year in terms of the Rob Gronkowski extension. He made $10.2 million last year, like I said. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes somewhere close to $10.5 million this year to kind of just give him a little bit of an accelerator. They're going to do this every single year for Rob Gronkowski until the year that he retires. He's always going to have those incentive-based contracts. He's always going to get paid off of how many games he plays and the stats that he put up. But I want to know from you guys, will the Patriots return to the Super Bowl in 2018? Now, the homer in me says definitely, and throwing up a heart. But trust me, there's nothing more difficult than making it back to the Super Bowl 3 consecutive times. So I don't know how they did it twice. I certainly will be stunned if they're able to do it 3 times in a row. They're obviously bringing back most of the same roster they did last year. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Patriots this year, but that Rob Gronkowski extension is going to be huge. We got a comment from Miller Rutherford, saying, no, the Pats dynasty is over. Well, if you watch the Cam Rogers show, it is not over. It's actually crumbling. So, over, not quite yet. It's on its way down. So we'll see what happens with the Pats dynasty, whether or not it's blowing up from the inside out. I still think we got 2 years left. As long as Tom Brady's playing the New England Patriots, the dynasty isn't over. As long as Brady's playing on the Pats, they will be the favorite in the AFC every single year. So I'm sorry, Miller. It's not over quite yet. You still got a couple years to go. You'll see my overrated teams, though, later, as the who in the AFC will not be dethroning the Patriots. Let's get into our next headline. Marcedes Lewis is joining the Packers. He signed a 1-year deal. We'll just kind of roll through this quickly. Be a fun tight end pair between him and Jimmy Graham. We know that Lewis played with the Jaguars for 12 seasons. Good tight end. He'll end up being their number 2. I don't really see him making a massive impact on the Packers offense in general, but it's a good signing, safe signing. We'll give them a nice backup if Jimmy Graham ends up getting injured. But for now, a big upgrade at the tight end core for the Green Bay Packers going into this year with Marcedes Lewis and Jimmy Graham. All right, our next headline. Ryan Tannehill is going to wear a brace on his knee. He has officially returned to the field for OTAs. He isn't wearing a brace right now because obviously a lot of the drills they are doing are non-contact, but he will during the season and during minicamp once they throw on pads and start hitting each other. As we know, Tannehill, he missed the end of 2016 and then all of 2017 with separate left knee injuries. He tore his ACL during camp last year, missed the whole year. Big shame. I thought last year was going to be a huge year for Ryan Tannehill, but now this is the huge season for him. I understand that he already has the contract, but this is the make or break season with the Dolphins despite the record. He needs to have a great individual season to be their quarterback of the future. It's time to put up or shut up for Ryan Tannehill. There are no more excuses. Their weapons on offense are good enough for him to succeed. I understand that the team in general isn't going to get a lot of wins, but if you're Ryan Tannehill, this is your time. A weak team, you're coming off of an injury, it's your offense now, you're the face of the franchise. You need to come in and win some games for this franchise and really cement yourself as the quarterback of the future. So we'll see what Ryan Tannehill is able to do today. Let's get to it easily. The funniest story of the week. Terrence Williams says that Kendall Wright crashed his car. Now, Terrence Williams has claimed that he wasn't driving. He told police that, quote, my friend was an effing idiot. Now, Terrence Williams and Kendall Wright go way back. They went to Baylor together, but here's where things get a little bit fishy. So apparently, Terrence Williams says that Kendall Wright called him after he crashed the car. But that doesn't really make a lot of sense because as the police brought up, Terrence Williams' phone was in the car. So how exactly would Kendall Wright have called Terrence Williams if Terrence Williams didn't end up having his phone? Now, Terrence Williams did say a lot of the things to police saying, quote, that's my $325,000 car that I paid for. I know that I can't drive a car. He was very obviously intoxicated during this whole scenario. He did also say after the phone thing, quote, I'm not trying to lie to you. I swear to God, I would not try to lie to you. Well, Terrence, I regret to inform you that I don't know how Kendall Wright would have called you and you have answered if your phone was in the car that he apparently called you from. This whole situation is just a massive, massive crap show, because now we have his lawyer coming out saying that, oh, Terrence Williams did not hit a light pole, yet in all the photos it's very obvious that he hit a light pole. Now his lawyer is saying that he doesn't remember anything because he hit his head. Oh, Terrence, what are we going to do with you? This is such a wild story. The videos of him falling off of his motorbike when he was going back to his car is just hilarious. Please go watch the Cowboys Report from yesterday with Tom Downey. It was a magical, magical, hilarious show that I was giggling the whole time. Terrence Williams, you've provided me so much entertainment for the next couple of days. I thank you for this. We want to know from you guys. Give me a reaction. Who do you guys think is the Dallas Cowboys' #1 wide receiver? Give me a like for Allen Hurns, a laughing face for Michael Gallup, a heart for Terrence Williams, or a wow face for Cole Beasley. All right, let's get into our next NFL headline. A quick one. Again, the Eagles have signed linebacker Kyle Wilson. He tried out for the team during the recent rookie minicamp. Big-time need for the Eagles at linebacker, seeing as Paul Warrillow tore his ACL and they released Michael Kendrick for cap reasons. He did go undrafted in April, but 173 tackles in the last 2 years at Arkansas State for Kyle Wilson. A good player, not an amazing player. I think he's an okay prospect, but I don't think he starts. It'll be interesting to see what Kyle Wilson does in terms of an overall impact, but I wouldn't get your hopes up if you think Kyle Wilson's going to be a major part of the Eagles' defense. The Michael Kendrick release was actually a surprise, but look, Harry Roseman, cap genius, one of the best GMs in football. I'm going to take his word over my own. I think Michael Kendricks is a good player, but they actually freed up close to $6 million in cap space by releasing him this year. Sounds like a good move to me. All right, let's get to our next one. Jake Butt says, quote, "This is the strongest I've ever been." So if you're wondering who Jake Butt is, this is the tight end from Michigan who tore his ACL during the Citrus Bowl right before the 2017 draft. Now, that was Jake Butt's second ACL tear since 2014. He does say, quote, "I feel great. My knee feels great." Look, Jake Butt, in my opinion, was going to be a late first, early second round pick if he didn't end up getting injured. He's a very good player. I think he's going to make an impact with the Broncos offense this year. They don't really have a tight end right now who is really going to light the world on fire. Obviously, Julius Thomas is gone. Virgil Green left this offseason as well. So it really is open for Jake Butt to make an impact on this offense. We saw the relationship that Case Keenum had with Kyle Rudolph last year in Minnesota. I think that Jake Butt and Keenum can have a very similar relationship this year in Denver. All right, our next headline, Zay Jones undergoes surgery. He will miss the rest of the team spring practices. The injury isn't expected to jeopardize his season, but he is expected to start opposite Kelvin Benjamin this year at the #2 wide receiver spot for Zay Jones. A very weird offseason for Zay Jones. He was arrested in LA on felony vandalism. There was also a video that came out with TMZ of him naked in a hotel hallway arguing with his brother Caleb Jones, another NFL player. Look, I'm not going to speculate, but that video reminded me of the story of when Chandler Jones, he was on the Patriots at the time. He had a bad reaction of smoking synthetic weed, or as it's known as spice. He took his shirt off, went to a police station, got on his hands and knees, and prayed for their forgiveness. So that was a very interesting story, and now seeing something similar to this in Zay Jones running around a hotel hallway naked, it just seems to be an interesting parallel. But again, speculation, nothing behind that. But we will see what Zay Jones is able to do. He will be fine for the start of the season. All right, let's get into Kevin White, our last NFL headline for today. Kevin White says that he believes in himself, saying, quote, "I'm motivated every single day with or without the option." Obviously referring to the fifth-year option that the Bears declined, which isn't a huge surprise, seeing as Kevin White has only played 5 games since being drafted 7th overall in 2015. I would decline his option too. He literally has not played half of an NFL season yet in 3 years. I've never seen anything like this. The only player that I've seen play less games in this amount of time was Justin Blackmon, and that had nothing to do with injuries. That had everything to do with him having a massive drug issue and then literally vanishing off the face of the earth. Vanishing. Justin Blackmon, we still have no idea where he is. So now we have Kevin White, who was supposed to be one of the best wide receivers in football, or at least one of the best wide receivers to come out of the draft in a while. He's been a massive disappointment. They signed Allen Robinson, so we'll see what ends up happening overall with Kevin White this season. But for now, we are going to just hopefully he can actually play some games this season.